Good morning. My name is CJ Duncan. I am one of the founding members of #Awoke Ministries. I am pleased to introduce our latest installment as our team of young adults has the privilege of joining Pastor Jerry Riddle. We will be traveling with him, learning lessons along the Jericho Road. What you are about to see is a two-part discussion. The first of the two will relate primarily to the parable of the Good Samaritan. The second will address the parable's influence on our daily walk as present-day Christians. Why don't we join the discussion already in progress?
Okay, so here's where we're headed. We're going to take the sermons over the last 3 or 4, 5 weeks, and we're going to take that sermon, we're going to jump into the street, and we're going to take what Jesus spun back umpteen years ago, and we're going to take it to now. And here's the way I want us to launch that. I want us to look at the Good Samaritan, and I'm going to ask you the question, have you ever had a Good Samaritan move into your life where you were at a point of need, you needed help, and somebody jumped in? Let's talk about it.
Well, for me, a couple of months ago, there was this huge storm, and it broke the tree that was hanging over our driveway, and we had to get up real early to cut it up and get it out of the driveway so Dad could go to work. And when we got up there, some of our neighbors were already over there cutting limbs off and sectioning up the log, and that was really a surprise.
That's cool. That's Good Samaritan 2019.
Yeah.
How about some of the rest of you?
I think for me, when I was little, I can remember many times that something would happen and our neighbor would come over and mow the yard for us just randomly.
Dude, I like that.
Same thing for me. Growing up, when I was younger, we didn't have a lot of money. We sometimes didn't have places to live. We lived out of a car, one night or 2 nights. But just some of my mom's random friends would let us stay on the couch for a couple days or give us money to get through the week. Those are just some instances. And then when we moved into Kristen and Terry's old house, the same neighbor would mow our grass when it'd be 2-3 feet high, and I know that had to be a job because the other times when I borrowed a mower, it took forever. So
that's kind of Christianity in action, and that's what we're looking at. People that will step into the world, our world, and talk about it. So anyone else?
For me, I know some have mentioned Good Samaritan, maybe someone that you don't know well, or someone you've never met, but recently I applied for a position that I thought that was kind of a shoo-in for at the place that I work. So it almost felt like promotion kind of deal, step into a different role as a leader. Well, I didn't end up getting the position, and that was really tough for me to go through that rejection. So my Good Samaritan story is more along the lines of people that I've created relationships with recently, or even people that I've known, and my relationship with them has grown enormously over the past year or so. But your father being one, when I didn't get the position, he was encouraging to me, and then you specifically were encouraging to me as well. And even just from the emotional standpoint, just saying, look, God has bigger plans for you. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. That felt like somebody reaching their hand and pulling me out of a place off the side of the road.
And CJ, I must say that this seems to be, this forum that's beginning here, that's kind of launched out here, is right on the heels of some of those tough days that you went through, and so I'm excited about it. Well, we talked about maybe a Good Samaritan stepping into your life. How about you guys? Have you played the role of Good Samaritan? Have you been the person that saw someone in need and moved into that need? Let's talk about that for a minute.
I have to say, when I was little, my mom always said, be kind, because you might be the only Jesus somebody sees today. So I've always kept that with me, and I've always tried to be the one to step up and help somebody if they need help with whatever it might be.
This one's kind of small compared to the one that I just listed, just from my perspective, and I'm sure that many can relate in our own congregation, but you never know what need there is for someone who has a truck until you own a truck. And then all of a sudden, people do need help moving furniture or whatever it is that they need help moving. And it's not that you can always help, but it does seem to turn out that those occasions that you can help, they are truly meaningful to people, and they really do appreciate it. And then dealing with vehicles, once again, having jumper cables seems to be the opportunity to be a good Samaritan to people you know and don't know.
Oh,
and I work at an elementary school where we have people sit in a carpool line, sometimes for an hour, and they forget to turn their battery off. And I've found an opportunity to help people, just do something as small as restart their battery on many occasions.
Okay, so the Bible's chock full. It's loaded up with stories and narratives, this kind of thing. Why in the world do you think, and Jesus in particular, if you look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, John particularly, you see him throwing these out all over the place. He's going stories, he's going accounts, he's doing word pictures. What's the value of a story or a parable?
I think, well, yes, times have changed a whole lot since then. Stories are always relatable in a way. You can, no matter what it is, you can always find something in a story that you can relate to. And I think that's kind of what Jesus was trying to do. That way we can still relate to everything in the Bible, even now.
Raymond, you go stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're in that world.
Yeah, I think he told stories because we as a race, humanity, we grew up telling stories about life and what it had for us. And because of that, we grew to make archetypes of stories, and that really applies to our lives because it happens in our lives. And that doesn't really change over time or anything because we've been pretty much the same for a very long time.
And you've talked enough to say that drawing a story, fiction story, and interjecting truth, you see value in that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just paint the picture?
Yeah, I think it's easiest to draw parallels to the show where reality is lacking in a fiction story, because you can make it as bad or as good as you want because it's made up, it's fiction. Mm-hmm. And I think that really can help you point out or draw attention to some of life's worst qualities in this day and age.
As we move away from part 1 and into part 2, I would like to share with you this message. Jesus refused to combine his deed ministry, his love, exclusively to the house of Israel. Even the account shared in Luke chapter 10 of the Good Samaritan speaks of others' actions by those in relationship with God and the way. Matthew chapter 5 verse 45 states that God makes his sun shine on bad and good people alike, and gives rain to those who do good and those who do evil. And as we think about that scripture, we will move into the second part of our discussion. Keep these questions in mind as you watch. How does the Lord respond or speak to Christians in 2019? How about unbelievers? How might that look within our community and beyond?
One of the phrases that was thrown out periodically through the last month or so is the phrase "just walk across the room," and that's not that wasn't novel with me for sure. I nabbed that from a book I read. Just talked about the power of being willing to walk across or take a few steps into someone's need or someone's life. Talk about that. Have you ever been that person again? Maybe or how could the church be that entity that would step into, would walk across the room? Let's talk about that. Individually or as a church?
For me, I've always been kind of a shy person. I've never really been one to go talk to the person that I didn't know or, just something like that. And ever since last year, the beginning of senior year, I always try to make it a point to myself to just step out of my comfort zone and just go for it. Like, just do it no matter what, not try to talk myself out of it. And I think as a church, it's kind of the same way. We're, as Christians, unfortunately, we're kind of quick to judge somebody based on how they appear or, just how human, how do I want to say this? How humans view, no, that's not how I want to say this.
Well, how humans view other humans.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was going for.
That becomes a wall.
Yeah. it's really sad, and instead of just holding back those opinions and waiting until you get to know them, and I think that's a big thing that we as Christians have to do.
I think what she's talking about, and it's a very real issue, is prejudice, which is not necessarily a bad thing. When you meet someone, you prejudge. We put people in a box.
Yeah.
I think those who feel conviction try to expand the box or the boxes that they have other people in, including themselves. You have yourself in a box, but if you have kind of a growth mindset and you're willing to not only walk across the room for others, but for yourself, which you can't walk across the room for somebody else if you won't do it for yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're not willing to try to expand the borders of your box and try to live according to an image that Christ provides, because only He can dissolve those borders, then I think you will be stuck in that prejudice, and then you won't want to walk across the room. But it's okay if you feel anxiety, as long as you feel called at the same time.
That's what Jesus seemed to really stretch us all, is because he kept coming with these stories that jumped over the walls that society was building. He kept doing this and just blowing our minds with, who are you talking to? Where are you going? What are you doing? You know? Well, if we're going to talk about 2019 in our own community, as we look around our community, what kind of needs do you see as young adults that are just out there in the street somewhere, not far from here?
Our community around Eagle Point Church is very turbulent and violent, and it's very dangerous in some aspects. And I think that we have been called to try to make the world better by maybe providing a example and reaching out and making connection and building friendships and drawing people into the great life that we have. And I think that's something that the church can do more of. It's reaching out plenty, but I think there's always room.
So we look all around. We look at South Pulaski, we look at Saline County, we look at Central Arkansas, we look at Southwest Little Rock. And we don't have to look far to be able to see a lot of needs. And what I'm asking here is, when you look from your vantage as Christian young adults, what are the needs you see within our community?
I kind of grew up this way, even though I had some in my life, but I think good examples of men to look up to, or mentors, or even being discipled in a church. I've been to many churches. My dad was a pastor, but him and my mom divorced at a young age, so that didn't really set a good example, or anything really in my head. But growing up, I had my brothers, I had uncles. My mom was a good male role model, kind of, in some ways, but I think mentorship and just men, being godly men, and showing that to the other younger men around here.
So the church has an opportunity to be a platform for that, just to go out and love people, men particularly. Yeah.
This community, not just this community, our society has a father issue, and I agree. And I think that's why we see issues with young adults leaving the church. It's not always that fathers vacate the home at the beginning. Sometimes they vacate the home when the child reaches some form of adolescent stage, or when they get into the teenage and young adult years, especially when a young adult needs their father the most. When you have ideas coming at you from all different directions. Now, I know you went to Southwest Christian Academy, and you went to Benton. Now, you had the opportunity to learn from multiple perspectives, but at Benton, you may not. You may just get the secular worldview. And having a father, especially, having the mother is vital to having a balanced household, but having a father who is someone who defends their beliefs and provides you the opportunity to ask questions and explore that with you. I think if our community had more male role models, as you have stated, but specifically father figures, I think that we might see more young adults in church. We might see more young adults standing up for social justice, not from one side, but maybe from the other side, or maybe even in the middle. And then we may see a society that will talk instead of scream at one another. But how else are we going to know if most of our young adults are being pulled in the opposite direction than what the church is asking them to do, or the direction the church would like them to come?
And the interesting fact is that ministry doesn't always look like the inside of a Sunday school class. And I'm not down in Sunday school or Bible study, but it's when it takes life and when we begin to go out and we touch the hungry community, or the ones that are trying to find a job, or struggling to get their education. Those are real deals where we have the opportunity somehow to be able to take that need-based ministry where we're able to move into it, kind of like we launched this thing in the first place, where Jesus stepped out and he said, I have no reservation on who I'm going to move into. I'm going to do some things that really cause this world to struggle, because I'm going to jump some walls, and I'm going to do some things that cause you to question, what is this guy like? In the Bible, labeled him that way. No one talks like this man. It's an aha moment everywhere he went.
As we conclude our discussion, I would like to invite everyone to pray this with me. Please ask yourself what it is which God has gifted you. And whatever that gift is, ask God for the wisdom to help you walk across the room, or be a good Samaritan with the talents you provide. There is no need too small for our church. There is no need too small for our community. Everyone needs a place, and yours is right around the corner if you believe. On behalf of Pastor Jerry and #Awoke Ministries, my name is CJ Duncan. Thank you for listening to the message, and don't forget the lessons learned along the Jericho Road.